Hello, welcome to the EPG Parshala program in linguistics. I am Pramod Pandey, Center for Linguistics, Jawaharlal Nehru University. Today we'll be talking about rule ordering, a topic of central importance in generative phonology and also a controversial topic. We observed in the last module that generative phonology has as one of its tenets the fact that the relationship between the surface forms and the underlying forms depends on the derivation of intermediate forms through a series of steps by means of the application of phonological rules. Now, the question is, we can assume that the rules apply automatically one after another in any order that is possible, or all the rules can apply together, or maybe rules are ordered one after another. The position that generative phonology has taken is that rules are ordered in relation to each other. This is the rule ordering hypothesis. Now, ever since it was proposed, the rule ordering hypothesis has come to be questioned. It's a controversial one. We will try to take a look at some of these controversial issues and how they have been proposed, what arguments have been given, and how the position of rule ordering can still be maintained. Those who oppose rule ordering assume that there is no rule ordering. Let us take a look at some forms which are cited as evidence for no rule ordering. In English, we have the r deletion rule, the British English variety. So the rule is, as you see on the screen, a r is deleted before a consonant or at the end of words. Now, given certain forms, words, the rule simply applies and deletes all the r's wherever possible. Similarly, there is also a r intrusion rule in British English. Between two vowels across words, a r can be intruded. It can be pronounced. Examples of r drop, r deletion, and r intrusions are given on the screen. For example, bird, work, war, far are examples of r deletion. Law and order, the idea is, are examples of r intrusion. The no ordering hypothesis adherents claim that there is no need for you to order, let's say, r deletion and r intrusion in relation to each other. Looking at the structural descriptions of the rules, they are available, and the rules will just apply wherever they can and give us the outputs. This is the no rule ordering hypothesis. Rule ordering hypothesis has also an alternative position, namely simultaneous rule ordering hypothesis, which simply says that the rules are not ordered in relation to one another, rather they can all apply at the same time. As opposed to no rule ordering hypothesis, the linear rule ordering hypothesis, which means the rules, phonological rules, are ordered in relation to one another, as if they come in single files. A good example of linear ordering is given by Jacobson and Jacobs in their book Understanding Phonology. Very simple examples of plural, let us say plural allomorphy in English, we have both regular forms and irregular forms of plurals, such as cat, cats, book, books, dog, dogs, bag, bags, etc. War, wars. And we also have irregular plural forms, such as child, children, man, men, datum, data, nucleus, nuclei. Now, suppose that the rules for irregular plural allomorph and the regular plural allomorph, they apply simultaneously, then you will get all kinds of outputs. You may get mans for men, or you may get irregular forms in place of regular forms. All kinds of outputs are possible because there is nothing to stop the applications of the rules. The rule will simply say that a single countable noun in the singular number takes the plural number. So you have irregular rules, you have regular rules. The rules will apply together, giving us all possible kinds of output. In order to prevent this, since native speakers do not have all these mixed data, rather the native speakers have only the correct outputs. That is, all the irregular forms come out correctly, all the regular forms come out correctly by and large. Now, this is possible only if in the grammar we have a rule ordering imposed. We say that the irregular rule applies first and the regular rule applies later. Once we do that, once the irregular rules applies first, we get all the irregular forms, man, men, datum, data, nucleus, nuclei, child, children. Once those plural forms have already been arrived at, then the regular forms come. They apply to other forms which are still singular, and thus you get correct outputs. This is a good example, a simple example of linear ordering presented through morphology. We have a similar position taken for rule ordering in phonology as well. That is, phonological rules we assume should apply one after another in order to get to the correct output. Now, the linear rule ordering hypothesis has further two different positions. The difference between them is a little subtle. One, intrinsic rule ordering, and the other, extrinsic rule ordering. Intrinsic rule ordering is essentially no rule ordering. What intrinsic rule ordering says, okay, phonological rules are ordered in relation to each other, but this is determined purely by the internal factors of the grammar. Let's take simple examples. In Persian, for example, and also in Urdu, there is a case of nasal consonant deletion and nasalization in forms such as, let us say, Jahan and Jahan. Both the forms are found. We get Jahan or we get Jahan. Now, we have two rules involved here. One, nasal consonant deletion, and the other is vowel nasalization. Now, in order to get the outputs, Jahan and Jahan, it is necessary for you to order the nasalization of vowel rule first, vowel nasalization first. And you say Jahan, and then na can be dropped. However, the ordering between the two rules is a kind of a natural intrinsic ordering. It is nothing like, even if you don't impose a restriction, this is how the rules will get ordered in a natural way. So this is the case according to intrinsic rule ordering in grammars. That is, most rules have intrinsic rule ordering. If so, there is no need for saying that phonological rules are ordered in relation to each other. As opposed to this, we have a clear position of extrinsic rule ordering. So it's not the case that there is rule ordering, but there is no need to specify the rule ordering because the rule ordering is internal. No. Extrinsic rule ordering says that the grammar should specify, given 10 rules, which rules should apply first and which apply next. What is exactly the ordering of rules? And this is important. This is what extrinsic rule ordering is. We will come to some examples of illustrating what is meant by extrinsic rule ordering. In fact, we will end the discussion in this module with examples of extrinsic rule ordering. But before that, certain other issues which have come up in the discussion of rule ordering. The most important issue is that of trying to find some universal principles behind rule ordering, so that we don't need to have extrinsic rule ordering. And indeed, at least one of these principles is almost inviolable. One of the universal principles that have been proposed as account for ordering in all grammars is what is known as the elsewhere condition. This was proposed by Paul Kiparsky based on his study of Sanskrit grammar, Sanskrit phonology. In its another form, in optimality theory, this is known as Panini's theorem. But basically what Kiparsky proposed based on Panini is that given two rules that apply to a form, the rule which is more specific applies first, and the rule which is more general applies later. So there are two rules, one specific and general. The specific rule applies first, and the more general rule applies later. The elsewhere condition can be explained with the help of the examples of irregular and plural, regular plural anamorphy that was given earlier. Notice that whereas the regular plural anamorphy is very general, the irregular plural anamorphy is very specific. So you have to have only a few forms. For example, datum, data. How many words are there of this kind? Very few. Nucleus, nuclei. How many words are of this kind? Very few. So you have, these are very specific rules. Man, men. But you can't have, let us say, pan, pen. Pan will be pans. So these rules, irregular formation rules, are specific rules. But regular plural formation is more general. So only after these specific rules which give us the irregular plural morphemes have applied can the general rules apply in order to get the correct results. Now, if all rules are of this form, there's very little problem. Yes, the universal principle will take care of them. However, that is not the case. It is not the case that rules are related to one another in terms of some being more specific and some being more general, so that there is a kind of metric you can develop, that is, these are more specific rules, or this is the most specific rule, that's the most general rule. This is not possible. Rules may be quite unrelated. Let's say a vowel, there may be a rule which says a consonant is voiced between vowels. There may be a rule which says a vowel is deleted after a certain vowel. All different rules. They don't relate to each other in terms of being more specific or more general. Now, when that is the case, then obviously we have to address the issue of rule ordering. There are a few other important notions related to rule ordering. Number one, cyclic rule applications. Now, there are rules which apply again and again in the grammar. Not all rules are of this type. So we have cyclic rules and non-cyclic rules. Cyclic rules apply whenever they can in the course of the grammar. Let us say a rule applies to a stem, internal, then we have affixation. If the rule can apply there, the rule will apply again and will apply again. A classic case is the English stress rule. So given a smaller form, the stress rule applies there. When we have affixes added, then the stress rule will apply again to the larger form, etc. So we get various different forms, such as we say electric, but electricity, universe, university, national, nationality, etc. So we get, when national will have one stress, and when it is added, we get nationality. This main stress changes. We say stress rule in English is a cyclic rule. That means that the rule will apply again and again, again and again by itself. Remember the classic argument given by Maurice Haller that rule ordering gets you a simple grammar. Now, it is also claimed that languages change because there is a change in rule order. Now, once you claim that grammars have a certain rule ordering, extrinsic rule ordering, that's how the grammar produces the infinite number of output forms. And then you say that grammar changes because of a change in rule ordering. There is a paradoxical situation. If grammars are if grammars are possible because there is rule ordering, then how is it that the rule ordering changes and gives you a different language? Now, this is known as rule ordering paradox. There are some cases of rule ordering, extrinsic rule ordering now being discussed in the e-text. Take a look at them. For example, we have Russian devoicing, the classic case that you should look at, and we have some cases of Yavalmani language, which clearly is a case of extrinsic rule ordering. And we also have Canadian English as an example of extrinsic rule ordering. We'll now go to the different types of rule ordering that have been proposed in very picturesque terminology. So there are four main types of extrinsic rule ordering, as you see written on the screen. You have feeding type rule ordering, bleeding type rule ordering, counter feeding type rule ordering, and counter bleeding type rule ordering. Four main types of rule orderings that are extrinsically imposed in the grammar. What are these? The examples are given there in the text and on the screen. Essentially, feeding rule ordering simply says that given two rules, if rule A applies first and then rule B applies, then you get a certain number of output forms. Let us say 250 forms. But if you change the rule ordering, if rule B applies first and rule A applies later, then you get more output forms. You get 350 output forms. In that case, then, you say that there is a feeding order relationship between rule B and rule A. Rule B feeds rule A. If rule B did not apply first, you will get less. Because rule B applies first and rule A applies later, you get more output forms. This is feeding rule order. Bleeding rule order is just the opposite. If rule A applies first and B applies later, you get a certain number of forms. But if B applies first and A applies later, then you get a smaller number of forms. And if that is the case, sometimes it happens, there are languages where you can have rule B applying first. If that is so, then, and rule A applies later, then the number of forms that we find in the output are less. So we say then rule B bleeds rule A. We then have counter-feeding and counter-bleeding relationships. They are simple to define. If B rule can feed rule A but doesn't, we have counter-feeding. If B rule can bleed rule A but doesn't, we have counter-bleeding. So we have then four possible conditions. When we look at different aspects of language, such as language acquisition, language change, we find that of these four different types, it is the types rule feeding, that is feeding rule order, and counter bleeding rule order, which appear to be the most transparent cases. And language acquisition is easier. Language change takes place more easily if the rules are in that kind of ordering relationship. The change is much more difficult and complicated if the rules are in the bleeding type or counter-feeding type relationships. These latter ones are more opaque and difficult to see for the native speaker. With that, we come to the end of the discussion of rule ordering. I hope you enjoy reading the text, the e-text, where you get a lot more data to discuss. To summarize, we have introduced ourselves to the various types of rule ordering and try to see what the rule ordering hypothesis is, how different counterpositions have been proposed to counter the rule ordering hypothesis, and how there are some very clear and strong cases of rule ordering, especially the different types of rule ordering. We will see later on how the notion of rule ordering has been challenged, but somehow the derivationality and rule ordering seem to be so intrinsically related to each other that we continue to get cases where there seems to be evidence for holding on to these notions of derivationality and rule ordering. Thank you.